Welcome to episode 3 of season 5 of the Filmmaker Film Watcher podcast. I'm filmmaker Richard Di Gregorio.
And I am film watcher Greg Ralph. These are big numbers for us, Ricardo.
They are, I know. It's yeah.
Going well.
We are.
Aren't we good?
This episode, we are going to talk about some New Zealand films, Kiwi films.
We're calling this our Kiwi Films episode.
Kiwi
a
Films
really
episode.
Original title.
I know.
Not up to our usual standard.
That's right. I mean, I was thinking about it, actually, because we've done so many seasons now, so many films. I forget which New Zealand films we've actually done.
Heavenly Creatures.
Yes. And I think that's probably it.
Well, listen, before we actually get into the films and what they are...
Sure.
Now, you know that normally I like to bring along a little something for our Christmas episodes.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I've got something this time. I know it's non-seasonal.
Yeah, it is very non-seasonal. What have you got here?
Well, I was thinking, how can I combine the world of Kiwi films with you? Because you're such, a good Italian boy, right?
What?
And I remembered this treat I had in Rome almost 10 years ago at a McDonald's. So I've recreated it here for you to the best of my ability. And it's in this cute little takeaway container.
Yeah, I can see that.
And there's little sticks sticking out.
Yeah, what is it?
This is a kiwi fruit on a stick.
Here
you go.
What?
It's Kiwi and Italian together. How good could that be for you? And what? It's okay. I brought you a serviette as well. And I'll take a photo. Hang on. I'll take a photo for our social media so people can actually see what this is.
This is literally a kiwi fruit on a stick.
I've shaved it for you.
Yeah, you have, of course. Yeah, I don't want to have it with the
And
with
I've
the fur.
refrigerated it. I imagine McDonald's probably in Italy's got some big machine that does it, but I've done my best knowing that I'm not a craftsman.
Well, it's like a gelati, except for a kiwi latte or something like that.
Well, I'm actually thinking of renaming the podcast to Kiwi Maker, Kiwi Eater.
Thank you.
By the way, the reason it's in a Chinese takeaway container,
yeah.
You know why?
Why?
Because I learnt in trivia last week that kiwi fruits don't originally come from New Zealand, they come from China. They're originally called Chinese gooseberries. So now I've got a really multicultural thing going on. I've got a Chinese gooseberry masquerading as a kiwi for a good Italian boy living in Australia.
Ah.
If that's not a similar multiculturalism, I don't know what is. But why don't we talk about some films?
We should. So the first film we're going to discuss is 1994's Once Were Warriors.
Yep, and then not long after that, 1996, one of Peter Jackson's early films, The Frighteners.
And then we're going to go with 2016's film, Hunt for the Wilder People.
Indeed. So why don't you get us going? While everyone's rushing off to shave their kiwi fruits, why don't you tell us about Once Were Warriors, Ricardo?
When released in 1994, Once Were Warriors hit the cinemas and had a huge impact on its audience. Directed by Lee Tamahori, who went on to direct films such as The Edge, Along Came a Spider, and even the Bond film Die Another Day, Once Were Warriors, which is based off Alan Duff's best-selling novel of the same name, is a film that hits you like a sledgehammer, making sure you never forget it. From its opening shot, which shows an idyllic image of the beautiful New Zealand coast, before pulling back to reveal that it's just a billboard, and where we really are is in a grotty, graffiti-ridden urban concrete landscape, we know this is not the New Zealand we are sold in any advertising campaign. It's set in the slums of Auckland, New Zealand, and the story follows the dysfunctional Heki family, who is a Maori family struggling to make ends meet. Beth, Rena Owen, does her best to look out for her family between drinks, while her recently unemployed husband Jake, Tamura Morrison, drinks at the local pub till late, getting into brawls before inviting friends over for late-night parties. Both are alcoholics. Jake can be nice and smooth-talking, a strong protector, which is why Beth fell in love with him. But he's also got a brutal temper when he is challenged, which he regularly takes out violently on Beth in some of the film's most harrowing scenes. Along the way, we learn that Beth's ancestry is from a traditional Maori village, whereas Jake's ancestors were turned into slaves by warring tribes. He thinks her family never accepted him. Then you have their children. The oldest, Nig, Julian Arahanga, who wants to join a street gang, Boogie, Tongaroa Emil, who is beginning to do petty crimes and has been placed in a foster home due to his home life, and Grace, Mama Angarawa Kerbel, who loves to write colourful stories in her journal and then read them to her much younger siblings. She holds them together, and amongst the violence and darkness around her, she is able to find light. That is, until she's abused by one of Jake's friends. Wow, this film was powerful back in 1994, and it still has the same impact today. On release, it really brought awareness to the grim reality of the urban Maori and how issues such as domestic abuse and alcoholism threaten to define their culture. The performances are all standout, but Rena Owen and Tamara Morrison are phenomenal. The story of Rita Owen's Beth finding her strength to become the protector of her family is just so powerful. And Tamara Morrison just owns his performance as Jake Hickey. I mean, it was career-defining for him. The subtle guitar score is memorable, but Lee Tamahori's direction is just perfect here. Amongst the brutal realities, he's able to weave in some light and hope. While I agree this is a tough watch, please don't let that deter you. It's a really powerful cinematic experience you won't forget. And I would suggest that everyone who watches this film also takes the time to view its sequel, What Becomes of the Broken-Hearted, which came out in 1999. It is a different film and more of a redemption story for Jake Hickey, and it completes the story and makes the whole story complete. Greg, what were your thoughts on Once Were Warriors? Had you seen this?
No, I've read it too.
Right.
But Ricardo, why don't you tell us about our next film?
Oh, come on.
Well, you and I are going to disagree about this film. And I want to make it clear that I'm not commenting on the truth of the story because I'm absolutely in no position to understand that. I mean, I'm more or less in the same part of the world, really, but it's, it's a foreign culture to me.
Yes,
I don't know anything about it. And I'm not critiquing the story it seeks to tell. But no, I didn't care for the film. And I watched the sequel because you were saying the same thing to me. You should see how the story rounds out. And I went into it reluctantly. I thought, oh, God, Ricardo, you've got to stop getting me to watch films with violence in it because I don't like watching violence.
Yeah, but this is part of what we do here. So we were watching the movie, so we can feel uncomfortable.
So I didn't want to watch it. And I agree with you that the first time there's violence, I think it's the first time, when the father takes the mother and is smashing her around the living room. Everyone else has gone after the party. I think it's the same night.
That's right.
And he smashes her head into the mirror and around the wall, and it completely savages her, brutalizes her, but also makes it impossible for her to go next day to support her son in family court, I think it is.
Yeah.
Because her appearance, she feels, will actually work against him now that she's, so badly beaten up. So the first time it happened, I knew it was coming, but it was still a shock. But in fact, in both films, and I know the second film had a different director, in both films, I actually started to find the violence unconvincing.
Oh.
I felt, particularly in some of the scenes where there are crowds around, a fight, like in the pub, I remember, I found the scenes...
Hang on, the pub fights?
Yeah.
Unconvincing?
One of them where there were people, either it was a group fight or people standing around kind of involved. I saw people who I just thought, you're acting. And in fact, I found that about this film in particular, I actually stopped thinking I was watching real people. Now, there were things about the film I really quite liked and I found insightful that I can come back to. But I felt like I was watching people act and delivering lines from the writer and or director.
Wow, so you actually, it pulled you out. You actually thought they were acting.
In particular, even though, who plays the mother? Is it Rita Owen?
Yes, it is, yeah.
I actually think that she must be a very powerful actress.
She is.
I'm less convinced about Tamara Morrison.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I thought he was better in the second film, but I thought he was okay. I thought she was a really good actor.
Oh, there's such dimension there.
Well, I didn't see it, is all I can say.
Yeah, wow.
But there were times when she was speaking to him, to Jake, and it happened a little bit in the sequel with his new girlfriend, plot spoiler, talking to him, where they would tell him what was wrong with him. And I felt this is not someone having a conversation in a marriage or a relationship. This is someone speaking on behalf of the writer or director to tell you about this character, so the audience kind of knows where they're going with it. So I just became increasingly unconvinced.
Oh,
Now,
wow. I didn't. I was completely convinced.
I know. So I think we're going to have very different responses.
Yeah,
to this film.
absolutely.
And again, I'm talking about it as a film story rather than the reality behind it. And so I think it did do what you're talking about in your introduction, which is that it really brought something that maybe was hidden by all the nice tourist images and
absolutely.
Else
I mean, that was a big moment when it came out. A lot of people were just quite shocked by
so
it.
I think I get it, but now watching it and knowing a little bit about perhaps what it was going to be doing in terms of the violence and so on, and looking at it with the distance from 20, 25 years. I found the second film, for example, had dated quite a lot. All the gang scenes when the camera's kind of moving through all these guys and everyone's wearing black leather jackets and black whatever and tattoos over their face. I felt like I was watching a bad TV show from the 90s that had really dated.
Oh, I didn't get that. I didn't get that. I think okay, but I'm really invested in the characters, so and you weren't obviously,
no.
so therefore I didn't really notice
things
that.
pulled me out of the story.
Yeah, right. No, I didn't find that at all. I found a lot of the storylines in Once Were Warriors were quite powerful. The story of Boogie when he goes to obviously the school or he gets to foster care and whatnot, but is taught by the teacher the haka.
Yep. And
when he gets frustrated and he does the haka and that is, to me, is very powerful. The Grace's character just and that whole story arc when she gets abused by one of Jake's friends is completely harrowing.
Well, yes and no, because I found that I knew exactly where the story was going to go.
Oh no! I remember that when I first watched it, and I didn't know that was going to happen.
So when did you first see it?
I saw it in probably 95, 96. So pretty much when it came out. Yeah. So and I've seen it a few times over the years just to rewatch, and it gets me every time. There's a real power to it, and when at the end of the film when Rena Owens standing up for her family and finally pushing away the abuse. That is such a moment, and she shows tremendous power there. Every time I watch it, I have the same response. I think it's a wonderful film, and had such for film to do that and to do that consistently. I mean, I don't. One of the things you want to do in cinema, whatever you're watching, whether you want to see a horror, you want to be scared, you want to watch an action film, you want to be on a ride. You're watching a drama. You want to be moved. This is one of those films which gives you a rare impact. It just hits you, and rarely does cinema do that to me. And it rarely does it hit you the way this film really just came at me when I first saw it, and it still continues to do so. I think it's fantastic.
Well, look, I did feel distance from it. It's not impossible that maybe that was in part my reaction to the violence because when that scene happened when the father...
Oh, it's a tough scene.
Yeah. I wrote a note to myself. It was like, why am I watching this? Like I was thinking, this is full on. I don't know why I'm watching this, in a film. So maybe distancing is a bit of a thing to like self-protection, but there's just so much I felt like I could see the wheels turning behind the curtain.
It's quite a... I just... didn't see that at all. I just didn't feel like I'm completely invested with the characters and the story. But that scene, that violent scene, the impact of that comes after, it comes directly after such a lovely scene between the two, between Beth and between both Beth and Jake, where you see. That's what's so great at the performances. And in one moment, you can see why they love each other. Then there's the brutality of the violence. Then you can see why she loves him, and she goes back to. It's a really interesting family dynamic, and one that's rarely done so well, I think, in film.
Well, I did get two things out of it. The first one, you talked a moment ago about the younger son and learning to do the haka.
Yeah.
And I really liked when the guy, the teacher or counselor, whatever he was explaining to him that the haka is pulling down on your ancestors.
Yeah.
I've never heard it explained at all, let alone so beautifully. I thought, okay, no, I get that. I think that's really insightful. And the other thing which you just alluded to was the role of music in both films.
Yeah.
And in fact, in some of the other films I've been watching, such as Wilder People, and I watched Boy as well, another Taika Waititi film, the role of music, particularly amongst men, like there's not a lot of cultures that celebrate men singing together unless they're like, sailors singing a yo-ho-ho bottle of rum kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the scene that I think you're referring to where the mother and father are singing together in the middle of the party where everyone is joining in as well, singing choruses, I think. They were extraordinary moments, and I got something from that, and for me it was an insight into the role that music must play within that culture, that even when there is violence and unhappiness and social poor circumstances, that music is something which still binds them together.
Yeah.
And that will let them, well, literally, harmonise. So I did find parts of it more insightful than moving, but I just kept feeling like that, it didn't feel real to me. Now, that got worse when I watched What Becomes of the Broken Hearted.
Wow, okay.
Because because we've talked about this before for Italian films, there were no subtitles. And it was one of those films.
Did you find it hard to understand them?
I did, and for two reasons. One, there were no subtitles, and there's a bit of an accent going on, which my ear is not completely attuned to. But the version I watched, the dialogue was played fairly softly relative to all the kind of the loud music and sounds.
Oh, right.
So I had the volume down because I didn't want to hear all that loudness, and I found it hard. Sometimes I really wasn't sure what was going on and who that character's supposed to be.
Yeah, okay, that's
but
interesting.
Even so, I didn't find the first one dated. I found the second one dated. I thought it was a bit confusing.
Well, I agree with you on that. The second one does feel a little bit more dated than the first. I think the first
and it's a different director,
is a time code. You can't. You can watch it now. It could come out tomorrow. It's pretty amazingly made. Whereas the second one it's less well done, but it's still very good. And it's a different film. It is a different film. It is a different film, and it didn't get reviewed as well as Once War Warriors because it doesn't pack that sort of punch as Once War Warriors did. But it is a different story. It is a redemption story. So it is quite different.
I'll come back to that, but I also think it was a mistake to cast as the gang leader, Ape Man, the same actor who played his best friend, who's a bit of a wishy-washy character in the first film.
Right.
And so I spent part of the film thinking, is this supposed to be the same guy who's now...
I agree with you.
Because he had such a distinctive face. They gave him a big, long wig.
Yes.
But such a distinctive face. And that's from someone who's not part of New Zealand, who probably knows who that actor is as well. I'm thinking, that's, George again or something. But the end of the film, it was meant to be the redemption where the father is redeemed, relative to his family.
Oh, is this in What Becomes of the
second one? Yes.
The second one, yeah.
By being incredibly violent with the gang members to retrieve his son. So you've got redemption of a very violent situation through violence, and then it stops when they're walking out of things. So there's no after story. And I just thought,
no, it does stop abruptly.
Violence to redeem against violence.
It does stop abruptly. And I remember when I first saw it, it stops very abruptly, and you sort of hope that there was a little bit more after that sequence, but
maybe with
still. But I still think there are lovely moments in that film when he establishes friendships with the other two Maori guys who are on the work site.
Oh, the father does.
Yes.
And then you had this scene where they kind of bond over killing the wild boar.
Yes.
Which comes up again in Hunt for Wilder People.
It does, yeah.
That and I wrote notes myself about for all these films, what is about crayfish and having really wrecked cars and about hunting boars as a way of like forming relationship. And yet in that second film, after the father and the two new mates have killed the boar and carried it back, and he's carried almost a kind of a penance pilgrimage up the hill on his back, this huge hulking boar, to the cabin. And then they sit down and one of them's playing guitar and they all sing together again. It was a return to that motif.
Yes.
But no, I'm sorry. I feel bad saying it because I think the film is trying to do something very important. And maybe I'm just not its audience. But
I think it does. I mean, I think it was so well received. I mean, it was very well received.
I
still is.
I found them creaky. And I wrote a note to myself, I found it heavy-handed and obvious. And I could feel the acting, the directing and writing. And I think emblematic of that were the titles at the start of the year. And they were very heavy-handed, like boom, boom.
Well, it's meant to be. Oh, it's meant to be.
Again, it felt to me like, here are the credits. This is a film, a story we're going to tell.
Oh my goodness,
It took me right
we're
out of it.
completely opposites here.
We are.
Absolutely, completely opposites. Okay, I'm going to tell you what I'll give it. I'm giving it a 10. I just think you rarely get a film like that, and that impacts that way. And I think I've said my piece. What are you going to give it?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I gave it a 6.
Okay.
For me, a borderline score is 7. And, when I give it a 7, I kind of think, maybe I should commit one way or the other. But for me, it doesn't get there. And it had a lot to do with the fact that I just felt like I was watching something didactic rather than genuine drama. I felt outside it. And it was most evident. I say some of the fight choreography kind of were flags to me, but it was really those scenes in the first film with the mother telling Jake what was wrong with him in a way that I just didn't believe.
Wow.
No, 6, I'm sorry.
For the drama in such a dramatic film. That's quite an interesting. That's wow.
This might be our biggest divergence in scores. What did you give Cabaret?
No, Cabaret was. Oh, I don't remember. I think it was a 10.
No, it was a 10. Might have been a 9.
9 or something. Yeah.
I gave it a 3. So, okay. Well, 6 to 10 still only 4 points, so maybe not. But we had still diametrically opposed experiences of both these films.
So the second film we're going to discuss is Peter Jackson's The Frighteners from 1996. Take it away, Greg.
Okay. Well, we reviewed, as I said earlier, Peter Jackson's Heavenly Creatures in our Breakout Performances episode way back in Series 3. And I don't know if you remember what you gave it.
No.
You gave it a 10 and I gave it a 9. We both really liked it.
Oh, yes, of course I would have given it a 10.
This is called research. At the time, our discussion focused on Kate Winslet, but we would have been equally justified in focusing on the writer-director as a breakout star. Made in 1996, The Frighteners followed closely after Jackson's Heavenly Creatures, and the record-shattering Lord of the Rings trilogy followed 5 years afterwards. So The Frighteners is a bit of a lost film, sat between two cinematic glories with nothing like their profile. It's a horror comedy that tells the story of Frank Bannister, Michael J. Fox, in his last cinema lead role. Frank is an architect struggling to get past the death of his wife some years ago. His unfinished dream house in the city of Fairwater reflects the lostness of his life. Due to the trauma, Frank can't remember how his wife died in their car accident. That same trauma gave him the ability to see and communicate with the dead. So he now has a unique business model, where he exorcises ghosts from people's homes for a fee. The catch is that these ghosts are his afterlife friends that he has sent in there with his business card. They are earnest 50s college student Stuart, Jim Fife, and funky black 70s dude Cyrus, Shah McBride. And then there's the gunslinging 19th century judge, a welcome return to the screen by John Aston, TV's Gomez Addams. On one of their house cleansings, Frank meets Lucy Linsky, Trini Alvarado, and her husband Ray, Peter Dodds. Frank is puzzled when he sees a flaming number 37 on Ray's forehead, but doesn't know what to make of it. But after Frank leaves the house, Ray dies suddenly to become a ghost himself. And Frank comes to realise that there's a supernatural figure who's literally building a tally of victims among the living, and it's also able to violently dispatch ghosts. This deaf creature seems linked to a mass shooting 30 years earlier in a hospital by Johnny Bartlett, Jake Busey, since executed. Johnny, not Jake. His teenage girlfriend Patricia, Dee Wallace, now lives at home with her decidedly odd mother, Juliana McCarthy. Frank and Lucy team up to stop the murders and rescue Patricia from her mother's imprisonment. Their quest is aided by a local sheriff, Troy Evans, and blocked by an insane FBI agent, Jeffrey Combs, who's determined to arrest Frank for all the murders back to and including his wife. Knowingly or not, Combs' performance channels a particularly madcap Jim Carrey, and I can't decide whether or not I like his over-the-top performance. The Frighteners was originally intended to be part of the TV series Tales from the Crypt, but producer Robert Zemeckis decided that it would work better as a standalone film and asked Jackson to direct. Jackson had co-founded Waititi Digital Effects Company in 1993. They apparently only had one computer to produce some fantasy sequences for Heavenly Creatures, but needed hundreds more for the numerous supernatural effects throughout The Frighteners. They weren't sure what to do next with all this hardware, but fortunately Jackson began conversations about the Rings trilogy while in post-production. The rest, as they say, is history. Waititi is now a world leader in the creation of digital and creature effects. But The Frighteners wasn't a hit, which Jackson attributes to Universal Studios' poor marketing of the film and their inability to get a PG-13 rating and Halloween release for his target audience. However, it was popular with many film critics, with the notable exception of Roger Ebert, who said, "All of that incredible effort has resulted in a film that looks more like a demo reel than a movie, like watching a random image generator. Last year, I reviewed a 9-hour documentary about the lives of Mongolian yak herdsmen, and I would rather see it again than sit through The Frighteners." So I think it's fair to say Roger didn't like it. But I did. Ricardo, what about you?
I did like it. It's interesting because I've seen quite a few Peter Jackson films and early Peter Jackson films as well. So I remember I watched Meet the Feebles and Brain Dead, and I loved them. You know, they're really great films.
Well, you grew up loving horror films, right?
Oh yeah, very much so.
And I didn't.
Yeah, but there's a real schlock horror comedy to his work, and it's all very funny amongst all the gore and the gruesomeness. You know, I remember in Brain Dead there was like guts going on the wall and it was farting. Like it's like he's funny. He's very clever.
And sorry, just interrupt. I mean, I was saying when we got together for this today that I've just watched Lost Silver, which is his not quite 1 hour TV movie made between Heavenly Creatures and this film, The Frighteners.
Yeah.
That's a mockumentary. It's a hoax, basically, on the viewer about early New Zealand film history. And it's hilarious. I mean, I loved it.
Yeah.
It had me laughing out loud a number of times.
He's very clever. With this one here, I mean, it's a bit of everything, really. I mean, it's a comedy, a horror, a drama, a romance. But it was a ride, and it's a lot of fun. I think Michael J. Fox is very good in it. I mean, he does his just normal Michael J. Fox things, but he also shows sort of dramatic depth in his performance as well, as he has suffered loss. And I really got a sense that he was very good dramatically in the role. The effects have dated, like in terms of the ghosts coming through the wall and whatnot. I mean, you can tell it's
but I have
computer
to say,
animated.
There's a scene where the sort of the light tunnel to heaven.
Oh, beautifully done.
When it's shining in the night sky above the museum.
Yes,
I thought that was beautifully
done.
Stunning.
Yeah, and the Grim Reaper sort of ghost or whatnot is. He's very much like one of the ring wraiths from
one of the what?
Ring wraiths from Fellowship of the Ring from the Lord of the Rings.
Okay,
Oh, well, but it's really good. I mean, look, I say it's a bit of a mishmash of everything. I mean, in his earlier work, sort of it was comedy and horror, and it was so perfectly done. Whereas this here, and I watched it with my son, and it was funny, but then the serious horror parts were quite horror. You know. They were horror. There wasn't a lot of comedy in that.
Is both unkind and wrong. Actually, it's not. It's got quite a strong story.
Oh, it does,
and it holds together well. There's a number of threads going on about what are these, like the numbers on the forehead. The burning numbers is really a good hook.
It's a very good hook.
I'd seen it once before. You hadn't.
Yes,
but that whole thing of. So what do these numbers actually mean?
Yeah.
What's going on? What happened when his wife died after the car accident? She didn't just die. Something happened.
All of that was great.
All these little strands going, and they do get. I had a film that sets things up and doesn't resolve them. They all get resolved.
But everything gets resolved. Yeah. No, it is very good.
It's not a show reel.
No, but I think there's a lot of There's a few jokes in there which I think it's sort of a hark back to the Meet the Feebles and Brain Dead sort of comedy where you got the ghost going into the coffin and having sex with a corpse.
Well,
and then,
actually, that was one part I thought it's offensive. It's a rape joke.
Well, he comes out and he says, "I like it when they lay still."
Yeah, I wasn't actually going to repeat it. But,
yes,
that's one jarring note in the whole thing because it's funny, but that was like. I can see why they might have thought it was funny, particularly back in the 90s. Yeah. But it's just wrong.
Well, yeah. And then my son who was watching it just went, "That's really, that's so wrong." And I said,
good on you.
You're right. And I thought, oh, wow. Okay.
You're raising him right.
Yeah. Jeepers. But the action sequences are really handled well, and And by the end of it, I mean, I sort of had an idea of where it was going, but I didn't care because I was enjoying that ride, and I think that story is quite good in it.
We are being very careful not to reveal a twist, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
yes, I don't want to reveal anything.
Which, if I can talk about it slightly obliquely, the casting was done deliberately to enhance the twist.
Oh, right. Okay.
So if someone's seen the film, you probably know what I'm talking about, and you can probably work out why the casting was important. If in doubt, look up the back film catalogue of that particular actor.
Yeah, and I know what you're talking about. You're right about Jeffrey Combs' performance.
I just kept thinking Jim Carrey.
Well, I wasn't thinking Jim Carrey, but he was so over the top in it. He stood out like a sore thumb.
He absolutely went for it. So
he did.
He's wearing, I think it's black contact lenses, so there's no pupil. I think that works. There were two other touches that he arranged and then showed to Jackson after he kind of put them in place. One was little things to stick behind his ears to make them stick out.
Right.
And the other was the Hitler haircut.
Yeah, right.
So this character, I didn't actually explain. This character has worked as an inside person for the FBI over many years in these insane sects and cults, and he's never been properly debriefed. He's obviously a send-up of Fox Mulder from the X-Files, but he's just completely, lost the plot some time ago. And so he's meant to be this kind of almost lunatic character. But yeah, the performance, it's the jarring note.
Fine, but I just think it needs to be reined in just a little bit.
Yeah.
But it was just one note.
Yeah.
And there was no sort of light and shade to it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But beautifully done. I really liked it. I think it's beautiful. It's very well made. It's beautifully made. The script is very good. I think it's, like you said, it's tight. It's got a good story and it's got a good hook and a good twist. It's competent. It's really well done.
Yeah.
I like it.
I think Ebert is wrong. Did you know who did the judge's makeup design?
No.
Rick Baker.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Now,
yes.
he designed it, but he couldn't come out to New Zealand to do the kind of the spot kind of stuff. So he sent out one of his assistants. He was booked on some TV show that...
As he would have. Wow.
Yeah. But, and for those who don't know who we're talking about, his big claim to fame is that he won an Oscar for the makeup for An American Wolf in London back in, was it the early 80s?
Yeah, yeah, but he also won it for The Nutty Professor and did all the characters
I think that's what he actually was working on at the time. So, not a TV show. So he is like, the gold standard for makeup design. Yeah.
He's the best in the business, yeah.
I think what's different about this film to the other ones that we're going to talk about is this is filmed in Wellington, but it's meant to be this, mythical town somewhere in America called Fairwater. So Wellington's, changed to make it work. But you compare this film to the other two films, there's a distinct lack of Maori characters. And that's because it's not meant to be New Zealand.
Well, it's not.
So everyone's very white bread. Are there any Asian characters?
I don't think so.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Charlie McBride, of course, is a black American actor.
Yes, of course, yeah.
It's very not terribly diverse. So
it's very American.
It was a funny kind of lack of sense of place, really. And I couldn't get a sense of how big this place was really supposed to be. I think it was meant to be a large town rather than a city.
Yeah. A large town, like a Ballarat to me. I was like something like Ballarat or something, which is a country town in Australia. I
was going to say for our non-Australian
for a non-Australian, it's a gold mining city in Victoria, Australia.
Yeah. And the other thing I just wanted to pick up on was there were a couple of interesting cameos in the film.
Okay, mention them.
Okay, Peter Jackson,
of course, he plays the
He's the guy wearing the asshole T-shirt.
Okay.
On the street, who bumps into Michael J. Fox at some point.
Yes, of course.
The sheriff taking interview notes in one little scene.
Who was that?
Melanie Linsky, the other actress.
Oh, yes,
from
of course.
Creatures.
And I was going to say, I think, this is my little thought, that he wanted Melanie Linsky to be the
Lucy character.
Because
she's called Lucy Linsky.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Oh, it's a tribute. And apparently, I've read, but I've missed it. There's a scene where Lucy and her husband, Ray, are watching an old video about the 30-year-old murders in this hospital, the massacre. And apparently there's another video on their shelf that shows Melanie Linsky and Kate Winslet on the cover of, I think it's a horror film or something. So there's little touches all the way through. But in the big climatic scene at the end, when Michael J. Fox is being chased around this hospital, it's now very, decrepit, dilapidated, and he's being chased around by someone with a gun. And meanwhile, he's having psychic flashbacks to wherever he is, to what happened 30 years ago.
Which is very well done.
The filmic stuff, including the old newsreel that you see earlier on,
yes,
then is done very well.
Yeah, very well.
And having watched Lost Silver, where they do a lot of old film recreations, there's a lot of skill there. But yes, the scenes where they just move seamlessly between the past and the present in these spaces.
Beautifully done.
That's
skillful.
You can't see the joins, basically.
Yeah, no, you can't, and it's really skillful.
But in that past bit, there are two nuns. Do you remember them?
Yes.
They didn't have much to say.
Yeah,
they were looking for a room.
I remember that.
The chapel.
Yes.
Well, those two people are the assistants of Peter Jackson and Michael J. Fox that they sort of wrote.
Oh, really?
The nuns, yeah. So I had to read that one. But
I thought you were going to say, "Oh, that was Auntie Mari." No.
Yeah, we just had her in the one episode. Yes. Love you, Auntie Mari. So, just those little touches of whimsy, like some are really obvious, like the Linsky name and the Peter Jackson, but even the two nuns who actually are someone else associated with the production. Yeah. I just like that. I just think it's really well put together, and I think it's a pity that this film actually isn't better known. And I'm not a horror film person, as you know.
Yeah.
But I like an intelligent ghost story, and I think this is that.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm going to agree with you on this one.
So what are you giving it out of 10?
I'm giving it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I was borderline 7, 8. I've landed on 8.
Yeah,
because
okay.
I've watched it twice and it stands up to a second viewing.
Yep.
And I like the story and how it all comes together, and the hook about the numbers and what's going on. And even though I knew the second time around, I was still kind of processing it in my head. I think it's a good film.
And it's a great film. Yeah, it's well written.
Yeah. Well, for our third and final Kiwi film in this episode, Ricardo, why don't you tell us about 2016's Hunt for the Wilder People?
Directed by Taika Waititi, who also made Eagle vs. Shark, Boy, What We Do in the Shadows, Jojo Rabbit, and the Thor films Ragnarok and Love and Thunder, Hunt for the Wilder People is a funny and heartwarming adventure which centres around Ricky Baker, Julian Dennison, who has been raised in the foster care system most of his life, going from family to family. He's seen as a problem to the head of the child services, Paula, Rachel House. Ricky's next placement is outside of the city, to the very rural home of Heck, Sam Neill, and Bella, Rima Tiwiata. Bella welcomes him with open arms, but Heck is not so welcoming, refusing to fully engage with this city kid. Ricky is quite disarmed by the feeling of family for the first time in his life. It's quite sweet when Bella makes sure a hot water is in his bed, or when she makes him a birthday cake singing a song about him. Her warmth and quirkiness is just gorgeous. And just as things are looking up for Ricky Baker, a tragedy happens, which prompts child services to take Ricky back into custody and probably send him to juvie, which is juvenile detention. He fakes his own death badly and goes on the run in the wilderness before getting lost. And Heck, knowing the land too well, finds him soon enough before promptly fracturing his foot during an altercation with Ricky. They decide that they have to stay in the bush for at least a few weeks while Heck's foot heals, and during that time, Paula from Child Services presents Ricky as missing, with Heck as his kidnapper. And this starts a chain of events which sees them on the run from the law. Along the way, they come across hunters who think Heck is a pervert. Ricky falls in love with a local girl, Kahu, played by Tiora Natai Melbourne, and even a conspiracy theorist nutter, Psycho Sam, played so wonderfully by Rhys Darby.
Well, he's always good.
He cracks me up. And it's all such fun. Julian Dennison is really so watchable in this. He's hilarious. And Sam Neill has never been better as Heck. Now, while respecting his work, I've never been a huge Sam Neill fan, but in this, he's just brilliant. The way their relationship grows during the film is just lovely. Rima Tiwiata is just sparkles as Bella.
She's very warm.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Rachel House as Paula really made me laugh with her "No Child Left Behind" slogan and over-the-top heroics as she tries to find Ricky. Director Taika Waititi films all have such a sense of fun about them. He can tackle serious subject matter and also make you laugh at the same time. He's a really great and rare talent. And he's a great actor as well. He appears in most of his films, and here he was just hilarious playing a priest giving a speech at a funeral. It's a great scene.
Not a terribly good speech.
No, it's not a terribly good speech at all. He also wrote this film, which is based on the book Wild Pork and Watercress by Barry Crump. The film's pace and structure is also great. Now, we are presented with chapters in the movie, complete with title, like a book, which adds to its charm. And it's really nicely shot as well by Lachlan Milne, capturing the picturesque countryside of Horopito, Manawatu, Wanganui in New Zealand. Look, I just love this film, and it's one I can watch over and over again, like most Waititi films. Greg, what are your thoughts?
Oh, look, I agree with everything except one little comment you made, which was about Sam Neill.
Yeah?
Sam Neill, to me, is always very watchable.
Yeah.
And he's got a real presence and charm. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned earlier how I'd gone back and watched Lost Silver, the Peter Jackson film, and he has a couple of little cameos there playing himself, reflecting on this forgotten film pioneer of the New Zealand industry. And you look at him in something like Jurassic Park. You look at him in the third Omen film, which is when he was really coming to fame.
Oh, yeah, that was just the final conflict,
which is not a great film, but he's always got presence. And I agree, this is probably one of his best films, best performances.
Oh, look, I think, like I said, I really respect his work. I think he's got definite charisma and whatnot, but it's just one of those actors which I've always sort of looked at, and I haven't sort of wanted to watch a film just because he's in it. But in this film, he's just wonderful.
One of the things that really struck me this time, and it probably did last time, but I think I'd forgotten, was some of the cinematography. It happened 2 or 3 times in the film, where the camera would do a 360, rotation around a landscape, and you would see different actors, often the same actors, at different moments of time in that landscape, and sometimes side by side of themselves. And again, I was looking for the joins, and I couldn't see it. So there's I think, the first time it happens, the boy and the older man, so Heck and Ricky, are in a snowscape and wandering around and working things out and so on. And they're really quiet moments of beauty in the film. I mean, this is not...
Oh, yes.
Except for a bit towards the end when there's a big kind of massive car chase on.
Oh, yeah.
Which for me was very reminiscent of the end of Thelma and Louise.
Yes, of course.
And
I think there's a lot of different...
It was a bit out of character for the rest of the film, frankly.
There's a lot of homages in there.
I suspect there is, yeah. But those moments in the landscape were quite beautiful in a story that was quite happy to meander.
Oh, yeah.
But things happen. We're being careful not to say what the tragic event was, but there's a tragic event that kind of gets the real kind of journey story going.
Absolutely.
And it kind of meanders without being lost. It's really quite interesting.
Yeah, but it's also the power of the performances as well. They are, they're just so watchable.
Waititi had worked with Julian Dennison earlier. Mm-hmm. I went back and watched this ad they made against drug driving.
Right.
And so he knew Julian, and he says that he wrote the part with him in mind, and I think that kind of just helps it work.
Yes.
And there are some great performances and some foreshadowing. So I agree. Rachel House as Paul of a child welfare officer. I mean, she's basically bonkers.
Yes, she is.
But not that.
I think she's a cop.
But not over the top like the FBI agent in The Frighteners.
No, very different.
It's a
very
different.
different.
And she was in, I know you haven't seen Boy yet, his earlier film.
No, I haven't.
She plays a minor character in that, Auntie Gracie, who runs a local milk bar.
Right.
And then she really gets a chance to shine in this film. And then she's popped up in the first of Waititi's Thor films.
Thor films, yeah.
Doing a great,
that. Yeah.
Slightly over the top, but okay kind of,
performance. Absolutely.
But she's very good in the way that, she's very serious within herself and says these outlandish things.
Yep.
And, I want a gun and all this kind of stuff. And as you say, she thinks she's a cop or a soldier.
That's right, yeah.
Like, it's a very good performance. But with the 3 hunters who the main characters encounter a couple of times out in the bush.
Yes.
One of those is an actor called Mike Minogue. He plays the quiet hunter called Joe. Now,
right.
I don't know if you know who Mike Minogue is.
No.
He has become a bit of a star in New Zealand because he's one of the 2 main characters in Wellington Paranormal. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
So Wellington Paranormal's a very funny mockumentary New Zealand series, and it's created by both Taika Waititi but also Jermaine Clement from Flight of the Conchords and the other things.
Oh, there we go.
It's a very funny show where each episode, which is only about half an hour, the two cops, a man and a woman, find themselves grappling with all these supernatural phenomena like ghosts, vampires.
When was this
zombies.
made?
Oh, it's season 3 came out a short time ago. It's still being made.
Oh, wow, okay.
I've got the DVDs here in my big collection.
In your vault.
It's really funny. I've had family staying from interstate, we put it on, and everyone's just laughing because it's so stupid but clever stupid.
Yeah, right.
So this is obviously, he started making Wellington Paranormal in 2018, so this is 2 years prior.
Yeah, right.
So it's a very kind of backseat performance, but I recognised him and got that extra kind of delight out of the fact that he's in this. Sam Neill's fantastic. Julian Dennison is fantastic.
I love the family
Rima
as well.
is fantastic.
The family, when he meets the family, and they're gorgeous too. And the dad... of Kahu's dad. The girl's family. They're gorgeous. They're really lovely. And the dad's just hilarious as well.
Well, the dad's very laid back. He knows because they've become accidental celebrities, like all over the papers.
Yeah.
The man and the boy who've gone bush, and is the boy being held a prisoner and so on. But he comes in and he recognises straight away, and he has this kind of goofy delight at meeting him, and then, of course, wants a selfie with him.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And you mentioned earlier about how they play that kind of daggy birthday song on the little Casio.
Oh, beautiful. Gorgeous.
So this is Ricky's 13th birthday.
That's right.
And I watched some of the making of extras.
Yeah.
And Rima, who plays the foster mother Bella, she talks about how they were sitting around and they wanted to do Happy Birthday, and the production discovered that Happy Birthday has serious copyright attached to it.
It does.
Now, this is 2016. Frankly, I'm quite astonished they didn't know that going into it, because, you see it all the time in credits and films. But she and Sam Neill were just sitting down, and she had a little Casio thing mucking around and just making up this stupid song about, how Ricky's turning 13.
That's right.
Sam Neill make up stupid lines that rhymed and so on. And Waititi turns around and says, "What are you doing there?" And so they told him, and then they said, "That's the direction we're going in." That song gets picked up towards the end and becomes a much more almost instrumental kind of pop song.
Yeah.
And yet its genesis was just mucking around while having a break on
it's
set.
wonderful. And I love it how Ricky Baker's really into it as well. Like he there's a beautiful relationship building there, and it's really lovely. Oh, there's so much.
Well, like a lot of his films, the success is really dependent on a great performance from a boy actor. So there's the boy in Boy, there's the boy in Jojo Rabbit.
Yes.
And now there's Julian Dennison in this film. Waititi obviously has an ability to work with and relate to and get great performances out of these actors.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, I love what he did with Thor Ragnarok. I thought what he did with that was just phenomenal. Really changed things up for that universe. And it was very fun, that sense of fun, like a childlike fun.
Oh, there's a very distinct Kiwi sense of humour in this film and in Boy as well. But that it's a very... I actually found myself trying to work out what adjectives would I use. It's distinctive. And I recognise it. It's dry and it's a bit kind of slightly off beam or left field or something. It's very well done. Oh,
it's very well done.
Speaking of homages, do you think it's deliberate that the boy is called Ricky Baker? We just talked about Rick Baker doing, the makeup whiz, and this character's called Ricky Baker.
I did not even think about that.
I don't know. It's just one of the things that
Ricky Baker. Ricky Baker.
That's the one. Yeah. We don't want to pay copyright.
Yeah, that's right.
And I don't know if you noticed in the final credits, there was one really nice little thing. So when they first talk about this place where the mountains meet the skies and you first stop into the afterlife, and the word that they use to describe it is majestical. That's not really a word, but
it's majestical.
It's majestic. No, majestic is enough. It's majestical. Right at the end of the credits, the film is copyrighted to Majestical Pictures.
Wow.
I really quite liked as well.
Oh, wow, I didn't notice that. But look, there were moments in there, there were touching moments, and the bonding between Sam Neill and Heck and Ricky, because it is a testy relationship at the very beginning.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but the beauty
Heck
about...
says, it was Bella, I didn't want you in my life.
That's right. And so to see, in any screenplay or any film, you want to make sure your characters go somewhere, right? So from the very start of the film, by the time the film ends, your characters are in a bit of a different place. They've moved on, or they've been affected in some way, which has changed their life. And this does it so well, in the short space, only an hour and 40 minutes, but it does it so well. And they are very different people by the end of that film. And so when you're following that journey, and it's such a seamless journey, it's beautifully written, So kudos to the screenplay as well. That's hard to do.
They've been out in the bush for, it's months, is it a
6
year?
months nearly, yeah. I think it's 6 months.
They made the whole film in 5 weeks. It was a really
quick
tight
shoot. Wow. Yeah, well, amazingly done for that.
So where are you going in terms of your score?
9 out of 10.
Snap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. And I wondered, is it an 8? But it's such a beautiful little gem of a film.
Well, I was thinking,
that you can watch repeatedly.
Yeah, well, that's right. I was thinking, 10 is like classic, like real classic territory, and I don't think it's quite there. But it's when I was thinking about an 8, and I thought, no, it's actually it's a 9. It's near perfect. I wouldn't change too much of it at all, really. In fact, there was one section in there which I thought,
what would you change?
Not much, except for there's one little bit, which I noticed when they go to the cabin which they find where the hunters are, and when in the first sequence, they notice themselves on the wall in a newspaper clipping, and it's like, oh my God, we're being hunted, or we're being famous, or we're being hunted. But then there's another little montage sequence when Paula is talking to the hunters and saying, and has got a drawing of who they look like. And the hunters are going, yeah, well, that's them. But I'm thinking, but they've just there's this newspaper clipping in the cabin. They wouldn't be looking at drawings.
But maybe that's about her.
Yeah, that's right.
And her trying to be this de facto cop.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that's probably what it is. She's just done her own criminal drawings.
Yes,
and has bypassed that.
I think it's quite clearly her drawing.
It is. Yeah, which is quite funny as well. But no, definitely a 9. It's a wonderful film.
Yeah, I just don't think, again, it's that well known.
I think it is.
It got a bit of a buzz when it came out, but if you weren't
well reviewed, yeah.
I don't know that it's not a film people talk about or reference or necessarily whack on a movie night or something. It's just, I think it's a bit forgotten, and it's a pity because as I say, it's a gem of a film. It really is. Well,
you can't find at the moment. I think it used to be on a streaming service, but I can't find it on a streaming service right now. I had to get it on iTunes, and I think, and that's sad.
I see. I had the Blu-ray.
Oh, there you go, the Blu-ray
with the extras.
Yeah, that's right.
And again, streaming takes all those extras away, and sometimes the extras are pretty,
Unless
ordinary.
you buy it on Apple, then you get extras.
If it's on Apple, but you think of the other platforms?
Yeah, probably not. No, you don't. Not with Netflix or anything like that. Yeah. You don't, no. But just getting back to this film, I just love it.
Yeah, it's got lovely touches all the way through. And I didn't mention, I wrote down a line I really liked when I think Hex says to Julian's character, to Ricky, very early on, he says, have you ever worked on a farm before, or are you just ornamental? And it was just a great line that captured the spirit of that character and where it was. It's just...
Well, as I was getting to the screenplay, the lines and it knows its characters.
It does.
And as I finish the kiwi fruit, that concludes our kiwi episode.
The episode fades into the distance like the memory of your kiwi fruit on a stick.
It was very nice.
Good.
It was very nice.
Who knows, we might create a new taste sensation wave. We need to do a TikTok video.
Oh, yeah, kiwi on a stick.
It's called TikTok, right?
I think so, yeah. So our next episode is Bad Films Ain't the Only Hollywood Crimes. And so tell us about that, Greg.
Well, we picked 3 films that are partly, wholly, or not at all to do with crimes that take place within Hollywood itself. So we're going to start with a film that I've never heard, and which Ricardo is itching for me to try and make sense of. 2001's Mulholland Drive.
Yes.
Can't wait.
Oh, can't wait to hear the synopsis of that one. And the second film we're going to be talking about is the 2019 Quentin Tarantino film Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
which, as I said a moment ago, is your attempt to try and bring me into the great Tarantino canon.
Well, I think this is a good one.
All right.
That, and I think Jackie Brown will be the next.
And then the third film we're going to look at, which I have seen but you haven't, is 2006's Hollywoodland, which is set around the death, suicide or murder of George Reeves, who was TV's first Superman back in the 50s.
So thank you everybody for listening to our episode 3.
Go watch some films, or if you're so inclined, make some.
That's right, and I'm going to say, please watch Once Warriors and What Becomes of the Brokenhearted. I don't think you'll be disappointed.
And then when you are disappointed, have a look at that absolute gem of Hunt for the Wilder People.
Enjoy.